And then things like regulatory conditions to resolve. So I suspect we're talking probably back end of this year, early next month.
Still not too far. And still time.
I would say it's about 3.5 years.
Okay.
So we're going to depend how.
Yeah, well, interest rates going up.
Living in interest rates.
Well, it was wary about moving now. Settle down.
But instead of maybe in a good market, so we build and sell, say, 15 houses a year, probably 30, 35.
Oh, okay.
But then,
Good evening, councillors. Welcome to our second meeting, almost less than a month. Our extraordinary meeting at Tuesday, 18th of July at the Guildhall. So just before we go in, I spoken to the clerk, we will change the agenda a little bit. The agenda 9 will become 10, and the agenda 10 will become agenda 9, if that's okay. And there are some mistakes which I'm sure the clerk will clarify as we go along. So first one is apologies.
Good evening, councillors. We have apologies from Councillor Blackwood, Councillor Dalton, Councillor Hibbert, Councillor McGrath, Councillor Muse and Councillor Wills.
Okay, any public questions and statements?
No public questions or statements have been received.
Councillor, questions and statement. Well, before I take that, I will allow Councillor Tom to briefly say about the Harnham consultation, which was forwarded to him by Annie Riddle. This is not something for us to discuss. We have a consultation till August.
The local plan review.
Local plan review till August. So, Councillor Tom, or do we have any councillor question statement before we go to Councillor Tom?
No other councillor questions or statements were submitted.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chair. Members will probably be aware that Wiltshire Council agreed the local plan going forward for consultation. So as the Chair and as the clerk's just mentioned, that will come forward for consultation from September time. Members will obviously be aware that there's been lots of consternation with residents concerned about some of the sites and so on. And some of the questions about Regulation 18 consultation. And Councillor Riddle, who's on holiday, forwarded me an email. So she had addressed an email to Richard Kluwer, which just simply says, can you please ask one of your officers to explain to me the law regarding Regulation 18 consultation, as everything I read online suggests that it is compulsory. I'm unable to attend today's meeting as I am in France, but I am in touch with residents who are concerned about this matter. And she's had a response, which I will read out to you from Nick Thomas, the Director of Planning. And it goes to say, you are correct that the consultation at Regulation 18 stage is compulsory. When we talk about Regulation 18 consultation, we mean, and then he includes a link, and this requires that a local planning authority must notify people with an interest in the local plan that a local plan is being prepared. It also sets out that the council must invite people to make representations about what a local plan ought to contain. Any comments received must then be taken into consideration when the plan is prepared. Regulation 18 does not require that specific site allocations be included or give any direction that the council must consult on any aspect of the content of the local plan. It is common for a Regulation 18 consultation to take place some years before a plan is produced, so the detail about what sites will be allocated for development will often not be known at that stage. Different councils take a different approach to consultation at Regulation 18 stage. Some consult upon a very short statement, others consult upon a draft plan with or without site allocations. Some councils carry out more than one Regulation 18 consultation. There is no prescribed way of doing this, provided that people have the opportunity to comment on what the local plan ought to contain. The approach taken by Wiltshire Council is set out in paragraph 3 of the 17th of July 23 Cabinet Report. Regulation 18 consultation was carried out in the winter of 2017. Informal consultation with town and parish councils took place in late 2018. In April 2019, growth options were discussed at meetings with town and parish councils and neighbourhood planning groups. And finally, a further Regulation 18 consultation took place in the January to March 2021. You will see that the informal engagement and formal consultation has significantly exceeded that required by the above regulations. The opportunity for local communities to comment on the final set of sites and policies within the local plan is Regulation 19 stage. That is the consultation that will be carried out in September, October 2023, and all views expressed will be considered by an independent planning inspector next year before deciding whether the local plan can be adopted. I hope that explains the situation. Please let me know if you have any further inquiries. So obviously that kind of gives response, doesn't quite perhaps deal with all councillors' and residents' concerns. So there'll still be questions about whether Wiltshire Council may take on board people's views and, objections to site allocations and things like that. But there's, in terms of Regulation 18 consultation, as far as Wiltshire Council is concerned, they are happy that they have covered all aspects of that, is how I would surmise that. And I know the leaders, all leaders will be given an update from Andrea Pellegrim as she reviews things and gives suitable advice.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Didn't add anything?
If I may, thank you, Chairman. So this matter will be discussed at the Planning and Development Committee on the 24th of August at its planned meeting. And as Councillor Corbyn has noted, Andrea Pellegrim, the planning consultant who is supporting the development of the neighbourhood plan, is preparing a note for all group leaders, which will be circulated in due course.
Thank you. Right, agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. I know we have some error.
Yes, my apologies. The date of the previous meeting is shown incorrectly on the agenda. It should read the 26th of June, as you will be aware. Apologies.
Any declaration of interest? No. Dispensations?
No dispensations have been requested.
Okay. Now I come to the chairman's announcement. So I have been busy since the last meeting. I've covered almost 9 engagement that totaled 42 engagement within the last 2 months as I became the mayor. I mean, I must say I'm amazed of the people contribution and the businesses, what they do throughout Salisbury. We really do offer a huge lot of things, and some of the things I would just quickly brief you on. on 29th of June, I've attended a local firm called WebFeed, who arranged a boardroom network of business networking group spanning from Hampshire to Dorset, and they had the very first launch at the High Post Golf Club. I had 43 business owners all discussing as how we can help each other and find a solution as what we have been through. Also, another company, 1st of July, UK Aid. Again, a local firm. This gentleman has gone out his way to look after the children, and a charity thing, Children Improve Education, Changing Lives in Tanzania. And our MP was there, and a lot of other people was there. Again, what he has achieved over the last 20 years, it's really is amazing, and we are grateful. It's a person from Salisbury. Celebration of Foven Badge, which honestly, again, it was a learning curve for me. It's the first time I've learned there are so many different badges that I never knew. So I got to learn all of them. There was a huge dignitary was attended. Our Lord Lieutenant was there. And as you know, on Foven mountains, they actually engraved all the badges. So it was really fascinating to learn those things. Again, it's good to be a mayor, and that's what we need to promote. So more mayors are made to experience those things. Citizenship ceremony, again, it's wonderful to see so many people taking oath from Hong Kong to all parts of the world. It is amazing, and I think it's one of the best ceremonies that I normally attend, because you really get to see a genuine smile, a happy face throughout the whole event. Official opening of Cameron countermeasures. Again, this is another one. It was a real eye-opener for me, because when I went to High Post, the service they provide, the decoy and what do you call it? For the security of the old Navy and things, it was just amazing. And 80% of the order actually goes from Salisbury itself. So that is unbelievable. I'm not sure if you have been there, but the protection they provide is just amazing. It really opened up my eyes, and it's almost 400 people works there. And what they have done is they've opened up a nice garden. They've done the garden. It is a beautiful atmosphere for where staff get to spend their time. So it was a jolly thing to attend. And coming to other one is Salisbury Bid. Obviously, they do a lot to safeguard or find solution for the businesses. They often have a network event, and I went and I saw all the businesses. They're all doing well. The positive thing is Salisbury is picking up, which is really good to know. And Salisbury Bid is doing their best to support them. We have a new, on July, we have a new Rotary Club, Salisbury Rotary Club chairman. The new president is Michael Bell, which I had the pleasure to attend and had a dinner as well. And another one, which was quite amazing to attend, was on the 11th of July, is the Salisbury Women's Refugee Annual General Meeting. Refuge Annual General. Again, it was quite surprising that they have started back in 1984 and going very strong, strength by strength. And I know Tom Corbyn was there as well. I saw your lovely picture. Hopefully I will have mine as well next year. But it was wonderful what local people, it just demonstrate what local people really do, and we hardly recognize them. And I'll finish with my final flurry is visiting sons. Honestly, it was an amazing trip. I mean, from the day one when they picked us up from the airport, and the mayor, Bruno Dapron, he has gone all out to look after all the mayors. The ceremony was wonderful. Luckily, the day was excellent. I know we were raining in Salisbury and Great Britain, but the lunch and the whole itinerary, the boat show, the fireworks, they really has looked after it well. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better friend. I mean, I know it's going to be rather difficult to say, but although being a councillor myself, I've seen the mayors are invited. But what they do and what we do, we really need to put raise our standard high, because they really do look after us and puts us in a shame. That's why I would say, I'd find a word, that although we do a lot, but when it comes to hospitality, I think we can learn some from other cities, the way they look after us. They have obviously looked after me. I was overwhelmed, and so I will be writing a thank you letter to them. At the same time, I will be inviting, even though the budget will not allow me, but I will certainly be paying for their hotel and accommodation and food, because I feel as what they have done is just be ready, Sven, you'll be having the same thing. So it's a wonderful feeling, and it is a wonderful time that they have given. So I'm, bottom of my heart, I'd like to put forward a thank you to Bruno Dapron for what they have done. So that's enough for me till the next one. Sure, I've got a lot more to look forward to, and we'll get back to our next agenda. Thank you for listening. And yes, I'm very sorry. The final bit, which is also that we would like to hand This Is Your Life to Councillor Tom Corbyn of last year. So if you can please come over. Do we have a camera somewhere to take a picture for us, please, if you don't mind? And you have been a wonderful councillor, Tom. Everywhere I go, you are highly regarded, and people do talk to you in a very positive way. So, so this is a small gift. This Is Your Life. I'm so glad. I used to love watching that program in the TV, so I'm doing it for myself now. So it is wonderful. Well done for what you did.
Thank you very much, Atul.
Keep at it. Thank you. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much.
No problem. And you, Caroline, to make him achieve all this.
I should probably...
Yeah.
It's a joke mare. It's a mare getting a wet
Right, agenda item number 8, a referral of minutes.
So there should be, again, I apologise for the error on the agenda. There should be 2 additional sets of minutes noted, which the Community Services on the 12th of June and Planning and Development on the 19th of June, in addition to the Climate Environment Committee on the 3rd of July.
So we come to our main agenda.
Are we all happy with the minutes of those meetings?
Are we all happy with the minutes? Show of hands, please.
Okay.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Right. Transfer of the land and row barrow at Odstock Road from Bellway Homes to the City Council. I hope you have had the opportunity to read and go through all the papers that are relevant. Before I open to the floor, you need to say, yeah.
So there is a lot of paperwork associated with this, and I hope you've had an opportunity to look at the Planning Permission, but this concerns a transfer of land at Rowbarrow and Odstock that from Bellway Homes to the City Council in due course. It's not an immediate transfer, it'll be in due course when the development is at the necessary stage of progress. We have had good liaison with Bellway Homes and Wiltshire Council developing this. We've been in at the beginning, if you like, of the drafting of the Section 106 agreement. I will just make the point, which I hope is encapsulated in the recommendations in the paper, which is this is an agreement in principle. And if anything changes between the information officers have, and that's been provided this evening. If anything changes between now and the transfer, we will bring this back to full council for their further consideration.
Okay, I have first person on the list is Councillor Ian Thomas.
I'd like to move recommendations 5.1, 5.2 and 5.3 in the report. I'd also like to thank the officers, Mostyn in particular, for all the hard work and in-depth amount of work that's gone into the maintenance programme for the next 20 years. And I'd also like to thank Bellway for the work they put into questioning this report and supporting this report, and at the end of the day, providing the funding for the next 20 years maintenance, as long as making sure we stick to the ecological management plan and the maintenance of the landscape. I think this has been a very good project. It's taken perhaps longer than we all would have liked, and we're not quite there yet, as outlined in the actual in the recommendations 5.2 and 5.3, but I think this is a good way forward for Salisbury. I think it's good for Salisbury, and I think it's good for the residents who will be moving into that site. They will be paying their precept and getting that open space managed by the City Council, which means we can fulfil all our objectives in terms of ecology and the environment. And in my opinion, they're not paying twice. They're not paying a management firm to do that. They're just paying their precept. I think it's a good deal for the future residents, and it's a good deal for Salisbury City Council, because we can fulfil all the ecological and environmental objectives that we have over the next few years. So I'm very happy and very proud to move these recommendations.
So, is that then seconded? Do we have a seconder? Okay. Bayliss. Well, thank you, Councillor. I will put it to the floor for everyone to have the opportunity. Yes, if you just keep an eye who's here. Yes, I did. I read it, and I also had the meeting, and I have to say, although in prospect it sounds really good, but my concern is, let's say once the money is run out after 20 years, for instance, that's 630,000. Isn't it right to say that after that money is run out, that we have to fork out the next, whoever comes in after 20 years, we are actually putting in a liability for them to cover, or for the council to cover. I'm sure Bellway does a wonderful job, so do they charge the resident for the area to be maintained. But my question is that, yes, we might get a lump sum of money. I'm sure I will be corrected if I'm wrong. But once the money is run out, how do we have a backup plan, and how would council afford to maintain? We can easily say no, I know that. We can say no, and I'm sure they will offload it to somebody else, or Wiltshire Council will find a way. But it is something that we should be also be thinking, that this money will not last forever, and this will go, and how do we deal with it afterward? That is something of my concern. And doing is, if every developer is continuing building, are we going to carry on taking the management side, where the extra income is going to come? That is something that we also be looking at as well. So that's my observation, but that is for the future. So, yeah, Councillor Nettle.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Councillor Soames' comments about ownership and being able to control the land, and certainly for the residents who are moving into the houses. I suppose I'm just a little bit anxious on the robustness of the figures, because 20 years is a long time. We've seen interest rates in the last 5 years rocket and go all kinds of places. And that's what worries me in that kind of a commitment. And I know you've got to start from somewhere, and I know you've got to do the paperwork, and I appreciate all the detail that's gone in of what we know now and the costs that we know now. And I'm sure there've been some sort of prediction on interest rates, etc. But that's just my concern, and I'll leave it. And if I'm sure that people can tell me that the model for the calculations has been very robust. I'm just a little bit nervous of that, that's all.
So is the question, is the 630k index linked?
Put your mic on.
So, sorry, yes, sorry, that's the question. Is how that 630, is it just a lump sum, or is it index linked to inflation?
It's a lump sum.
And is it payable in one hit at the beginning of the cycle, or is it?
Yes. The funds go to Wiltshire Council initially, and then they will be transferred to us if we agree to take on the liabilities, subject to a side agreement.
Yes.
Before I met with my fellow councillors and read these figures during my lunch hour today, I was concerned about the figures too. And having worked in planning and seen when 06, agreements drawn up, and then a few years later seeing the devastation that that could cause, I was very concerned that over 20 years, it's great to have a pot of money like that, but after 20 years, what would that be worth in 20 years' time? The costs will perhaps have risen on the model that this has been based on, and so I'm really concerned that we will be paying for it before the 20 years are out, because it won't last that long.
I'll just quickly come into that one, Councillor Jowiat. That's exactly what I've asked also the clerk as well. But one of the possibility, although this is a further discussion, this is purely for us if we want to take on the land or not. What we do with the money in the future is a different thing. It's something that we can, I'm sure we can work out. If we have 600,000, 630,000 pounds, I'm sure we can invest on something that generate income, which can pay off. And even after 20 years, we still have that equity still in place, and we can carry on serving that land as possible. So those are the discussion that we can have after, and which I did put to Clark, and I'm sure you'll consider. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, of course. I mean, 20 years, 30 years, who knows where the finance would be, who knows where the council would be. Yeah, it's very hard to predict 5 years ahead, let alone 20 years, as we've all known, and we've all experienced debates about selling off the council houses, where they're all going to fall off the edge of a cliff after 20 years and all that. But I would say this is a very robust set of figures, and it gives us a good lump sum right at the beginning to spend on what is outlined within the report. And on the point about what happens at the end of 21 years, I mean, most of us in this room, most of us councillors in the room, live near a park. We pay our precept, and as we pay our precept, that covers partly the cost, part of that precept covers the cost of that park. Why do we think that people who move into this part of the city shouldn't have exactly the same as what we have? So after 20 years, their precept would be paying for the maintenance of that park, like the park next to me is paid for out of my precept payment. I don't pay an additional fee because I live next door to a park. I pay as part of my precept. That's exactly the same as for everybody else. We are here doing something that we should have been doing all along on other developments, but even more so historically. Quite often in the last 30, 40 years, we've ended up taking on communal land without any payment up front because it's just been abandoned by the developer. And we've got no money. The residents who live there suddenly come to us and say, well, we don't own this little bit of land. Who's going to look after it? So the cost falls on us, as it should do, because they're precept payers. And this is exactly the same with these people. They live in the city, they pay their precept, they expect something in return, and that would be the maintenance of that land. I think having 20 years maintenance programme paid for in advance is how we should be going, and it's a good way to manage things. I wouldn't turn around and say, well, it's not enough, perhaps it should be 30 years. Well, there could be an argument there, I suppose, but it's a lot better than what we've achieved up to now. We've got loads of pockets of land which come across from us developers with no money up front for that maintenance. And I think this is a good proposal, and I really, really, really do feel it is what we should be doing.
Thank you, Councillor. Point noted. I mean, you have to also understand not every property are same. Bellways, I'm sure they're charging their resident for the maintenance as well, additional to their service charge. So, yep, Councillor Sample. Councillor Charleston.
I think we've got a problem here, because how much is enough? You know, really, if we look at, you know, if it had been £700,000, would that have been enough? Would it have been 800,000? Would that have been enough? Who knows? It's very much, you know, licking your finger and sticking it in the air to see whether it seems to be right. I think the officers and the people responsible for coming up with this agreement are to be congratulated, because in Wiltshire, not just Wiltshire, in other areas of England, there are lots of councils which do not have planned maintenance programmes. We have great buildings in Salisbury, owned by Wiltshire Council, lying pretty much empty, derelict and unused, for which there is no maintenance or repair programme. Contrast that with this authority, which has just managed to land 630 something thousand pounds in order to look after this piece of land for the next 20 years. There is a qualitative difference in the approach of these two authorities. One doesn't invest and is left with buildings that run out, cannot be used, and one of them has produced a really good settlement, which I think we should support. And the good news for all of us is we probably won't be here when the money runs out.
Thank you, Councillor Sampo. But that doesn't mean to say, Councillor Sampo, that doesn't mean to say that we leave a burden for our future generation. Yeah, Victoria, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I can understand some councillors' concerns about 20 years and the money, I would echo Councillor Tome's congratulations about the amount of work that's gone into this. If you look at your documents that were circulated, there is an 8-page plan here that talks about a plan for 20 years, looking at the retained area of semi-improved grassland, an 8-metre width margin of the retained semi-improved grassland, newly created areas, the beach areas, the native scrub areas, the native hedgerows, saying exactly what's going to happen over the next 20 years and how much is going to be spent on each activity over the 20 years to come up to that 630 or 628,000 pounds costing. So I think an awful lot of work has been done here. It's a very considered amount of money. Obviously, we're sticking our finger in the air still. You don't know where inflation is going to be. But as Ian says, having this money here, enabling us to do this work on behalf of residents is a really fantastic testament to the work of the City Council.
Thank you, Councillor Charleston. Yep. Caroline. Caroline first.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. And with the fact that we're an explosion of houses everywhere, maintaining a grassed area or something for future is beneficial. And actually what we may see as a burden, councillors as future may not feel that that's a burden. So you can't predict the future. You've just got to look after the now. We've been given the opportunity of money for 20 years. That's a pretty long now. So I'd go for it.
Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chairman. I do think there's only a small risk. This is, by any measure, a far better deal than what we got on taking on work from Wiltshire Council. This has got real money attached to it. There's a 20-year time period. But just think how many new homes will be built in Salisbury in that 20 years and will be paying their precip into our coffers. So I'm sure it'll be past my sell-by date, but I think there's enough reassurance with the growth in housing, which is going to happen, is unstoppable, and the fact that this money at least lasts for 20 years.
I hope not is your past date, but so, yeah, I hear what you said. Councillor Sven Hocking.
Nice to hear your support of large house building projects, Ricky. I like that. Hold that for Site 8 and Site 6, yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Ian, you always get so animated when someone questions numbers. And you did mention just now about, the precept pays for our parks and open spaces. As a percentage of our income, the last pie chart I saw suggested 50%. Is that about right of our entire annual budget is spent on parks, open spaces and that sort of thing, did I see? Roughly? So actually half your precept goes to paying for the parks and open spaces in the city, yeah?
And everything in with environmental services.
Yeah, okay, but generally speaking. So firstly, question, under the normal scheme of things, if the developer withheld the site, he would make a service charge or a management charge on those properties, which would help fund the maintenance of this open space, yeah? Is that still going to happen? I'm assuming not. If the land comes to us, would the city council benefit from a similar arrangement, or are we saying there will be no management charge from the city council to these 88 properties to manage their open space?
Do you want to answer this or?
Ian, yeah, anybody? I'm just asking the question.
They may, I mean, we will be managing and owning the land.
Yeah.
We will not be employing a management company to do that.
No, we will be the management company.
Yes.
But
So I don't know whether the Residents Association might in the future decide they want to have something else done. But in terms of the open space, in terms of the ground maintenance, the answer is
purely precept funded.
It'd be precept funded.
All right, that's fine. So if I look at £630,000 roughly divided by 20 years roughly, that works out at about £32,000 a year to manage the space. If I take 88 properties at 300 and a bit pounds for the precept every year, that comes to about 32,000 quid. So in Ian's instance that he used, he said the precept pays for the parks and open spaces around his place to the tune of 50% of his precept. But in these places, it will be 100% of their precept will be used to pay for the management of parks and open space on their doorstep. So all the other stuff that the city council does around stuff that's going on out here, communities, street scene, effectively, these 88 properties will get for free. So the rest of the city will effectively be subsidising their contribution. So the work that's gone into this to come up with those numbers is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a brilliant job. Somebody's actually sat down and gone through this with a fine-tooth comb and really worked out what it will cost. And they've come up with that number. My only question is why I'm sort of wobbling a bit on supporting this, is why should the rest of the city's contribution to parks and open spaces be 50%, because the other 50's got to cover everything else, but these particular properties effectively get that part of the rest of the city council's operation subsidised, because their precept is paying solely for the management of the parks and the open space. So I know we've done a great diversity, biodiversity plan, all the rest of it, and again, great work, but have we sort of gold-plated that plan to the point that it costs far more money to look after the open space at Rowbarrow than it does for the rest of our parks and open spaces? And if that's the case, is that a fair and equitable thing to do for the rest of our residents? If that number had come back and been 50% of what the precept for those houses is going to be, no problem whatsoever on my part. But I'm struggling with why so much in comparison with the rest of the city. Thank you.
Do you want to answer to that?
I would just point out that this is a Section 106 negotiation. If the council were to set a figure that is not acceptable to the developer, we may have no agreement at all. So, you know.
Just before I come to Alan, am I right to think also that if we were to take on this land, there would be additional staff would be required?
Yes, and that is what the funds are there to cover, the staff required to do this. Now, the maintenance schedule is described in the planning permission. So we take on those liabilities, and that will be set out in the side agreement that we sign from Wiltshire Council. You take on the liabilities as you take on the 106 money. You can't have one and not the other.
So from my perspective, if that 630,000 had been 1.2 mil, I'd be going, yeah, fantastic, because that aligns up with everything else. Yeah, sorry, I'll shut up. I think.
Thank you. Just to be devil's advocate here and throw a spanner in the works, you mentioned the rest of the city subsidising this development at Rowbarrow. This is not a first case. I mean, effectively, you have East Hants Enforcement who were policing the city centre being subsidised by the other 7 wards, and also Venture Security, who policed the city centre being subsidised by the other 7 wards. So it's not setting a precedent here that the rest of the city is subsidising just one particular area. Thank you.
Thank you. Point noted.
So you could also argue the rest of the city won't use the park up at the road. I'm just I'm not trying to be specifically picky individual things. It's just a general comment, and I'd be interested to know what other councillors think of that.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I think unless I think we've discussed enough. The bottom line is how I look at it is we are John Wells. Okay. I couldn't hear right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think if anybody else wishes to say, I will give the floor, but I think we've heard enough. And I just want to clarify one thing. We're just a bit cautious, that's all. I mean, it's no harm being cautious of what future holds for us. What we certainly don't want to do is get something and then we realize we made a mistake. So it's good to have a dialogue and good to have that open. But yes, again, I think Office has done a sterling job on this one. I've seen, and Mostyn has come up with a very good plan. And also one of the things I do like is the 5.2, which I did have a brief with our clerk saying that if anything were to go wrong, or if they were to, it's often the case at the end, they might back off, or they might say, well, we can't pay you that much. We have the right to pull off. So which is a great way to cover. So I will take the final question from Councillor Neto, and then we'll come to a vote.
That's kind of you. It's a statement as opposed to a question. And I think, first of all, I wanted to say we've taken the staff that do all this work in-house for a purpose. And we encourage them to go out and bring in new business. This is exactly what our staff has just done. And we're debating something around this table. I would congratulate, and I think they have been congratulated, and I totally understand Councillor Hock's views, both councillors' views on this. It is that nervousness that, 20 years' time. But I suppose what I'm looking at is the advantage is it's a bird in the hand rather than 2 in the bush, isn't it? And it's definitely cash in hand. Oh, sorry, it's definitely cash now and not later. So I think that we have a responsibility anyway. And I think this is a good example of what we wanted our officers to do. And I would encourage them to look at elsewhere to do similar kinds of projects around the city, because what is happening is that, and we heard earlier, that other parishes have got large developments going on and no money will come to this city. So we need to go out to those parishes and see if we can do work for them. So I would just like to congratulate and record my thanks to the staff for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you. I echo that, Councillor Neto. So anybody else wishes to speak before we conclude this? My final wish would be that there's a perfect opportunity. If we do get that lump sum, please think of it. We can use it and regenerate extra money from it as well, if we wish. So let's go to the vote. Are we all content? So I will be.
So that's carried.
I will abstain.
Do you want to put those against?
Anybody against? Oh, sorry. Yes, quickly.
Could I just ask that we use the microphones, that we put the microphones as close to our mouths as we can and we speak up, otherwise the sound system will have no chance of picking us up. And I've been where John's been before and you can't hear a blooming thing and it's really hard, so please.
Thank you, Joe. I have an awful deputy, so I'm sorry. You know, he should have picked that up. So, right. Okay. So that is carried. Right. So we go to our secondary motion, which is Councillor Sample's motion to consider the notice of motion from Councillor Sample. Floor is yours.
Chair, how long do you want me to go on for?
About 2 minutes. 14 seconds. No. I've been generous. 2 minutes, please, because we know I would like to hear from you, and then I will say something as well.
Chair, right. So the City Hall was built by subscriptions raised by local children and the public in Salisbury in order that the building could be purchased as a war memorial. Since then, it has been a very successful village hall and education venue for training. It's also had many of the world's top bands playing there, including the Rolling Stones. Every time it has a big event on, whether it's comedians or David Bowie, it's filled up Fishton Street and the centre of the city with paying visitors who have used the cafes and restaurants, the nightlife, the pubs, etc. It's a massive loss to the income of our city that we have lost it all. The reason it went to Wiltshire Council was because Jane Scott, Lady Scott, wanted it because she was a regular user of it. She was often there as a member of the audience and was very enthusiastic about the future of the hall. And so the Wiltshire Council tried really to secure it as part of the transfer of undertakings when Salisbury District Council was abolished. People are concerned about the fact that it has been empty now over the period of the last 2 years, really since the end of the COVID vaccination programme. And we've had all sorts of delays, we've had obfuscation, we've had weasel words, we've been told it's unsafe. It may very well be unsafe, but we haven't actually seen the report from the surveyor. We've asked for a copy of it on headed notepaper or something similar in order to back up what the council says about it. Many of us want to go inside and see what sort of state it's in. Members of the area board for Salisbury have expressed their views on numerous occasions about this and are concerned about it. It needs to reopen now. When I say now, I mean presently, I mean without delay, I mean promptly, I mean soon, I mean shortly, I mean opportunely, I mean briskly, I mean punctually, I mean snappily. Wiltshire Council needs to get its act together and return it to active use as soon as possible. And the money that was it received in income from the NHS should be used as a part payment towards that. And we ought to go to the capital, the local authority capital works loan board in order to secure the remaining funding to put it back into action. Wiltshire Council needs to stop mucking about and get on with it. 1,600 people agree with me and have signed a petition, and I hope very much tonight Salisbury City Council will add its name to the list.
Thank you, Councillor Sample, to make it that brief. Before I go to question, I thought of this and I have read the papers as well. One thing I want to clarify myself, that Wiltshire Council has no means said they will want to remain disclosed. They always said it will be open. However, Councillor Sample, your motion, you are a Wiltshire councillor as well as a city councillor. Are you saying that you wish to go against the officer's recommendation of, given the safety of the building at the roof, because it is the Wiltshire councillor, you are a Wiltshire councillor as well, and I know when it comes to planning and all the other departments, we fundamentally adheres the officer's recommendation. However, the counter argument is, well, it was being used for COVID time and things like that. However, I have also asked the question. There is a distinct difference between a live venue and a normal usage of the building. Live music will cause a huge disruption to the floors, the roof, and it can cause a major defect and cause harm to the public. For me, I absolutely want the City Hall to open. It plays a fundamental role within our city centre, and it is a gem. But I also have to understand the safety, which I value highly before anything. So, you know, yeah, you can. I'm just.
You asked me a fair question.
I'm just trying to summarize quickly. I'll just summarize.
All right. Okay. I'll answer all of your questions at the end.
Yes.
It may take more than 2 minutes.
That is my concern, is the safety. If you to say that no, I am willing to put my name on the line, that nothing will happen, then maybe that is a different thing we can consider. But I cannot for a second that I cannot risk public's life of this the building that has a huge concern on, and I believe Wiltshire Council officers are robust and they are very good at what they're doing. But yes, we should start the dialogue that what I would prefer is to put pressure on Wiltshire Council to get on with it ASAP, make the building safe and get the building open. That's what we need to see. Thank you.
Chair, in that case, you will support the motion that I've put. Because
as a chairman,
to answer your question.
No, as a chairman, I will be neutral.
You asked me a question, would I? And the answer to it is yes. And the reason that I would is this.
So you're putting a name forward?
Because a piece of ceiling fell down in 2016, 2017, the size of a plate. Wiltshire Council then let the building to the NHS as a COVID centre for inoculations. They were happy for that building to be open as an inoculation centre, despite the fact that that roof had partially come down a couple of months before. What I'm asking the council to do, in answer to your question, is to put in place a proper repair and maintenance programme, to use the money it's received from the NHS to make that building safe, and to raise the difference from the local authority Capital Loans Board in order that it can be got back into action without delay, promptly, soon, shortly, briskly, punctually, snappily. Those are the definitions of now.
But so, sorry, yes. Sorry, you were saying, Councillor Thomas?
Chairing the meeting, not hogging the meeting.
I do have the right to speak or talk to the motion as well as you do, Councillor Thomas. You know very well. You did the same thing when you were the chair, and I have absolutely right to do, as a chairman, I think I have the right to ask and answer the question. If you have something to write, you are welcome to say something. Do you wish to say something? Thank you. I think Councillor Thomas was first. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll second the motion. And may I speak as well? Okay, so I'll just firstly congratulate Councillor Sample on keeping a very short, simple motion. It's actually quite refreshing to have something that's just brief, and he's gone out the room, so he doesn't get the praise, but there we go. It's kind of nice. So again, on the understanding that obviously we're not Wiltshire Council, we're not managing Wiltshire Council, but we're trying to put pressure on Wiltshire Council. And in that regard of trying to say, it's a bit of pull your finger out. It's not the first time where Wiltshire Council has been found wanting on its management of its own buildings, of its own estate. And it's not the first time that the City Council will have raised issue with the fact that it's not managing its own maintenance. So the piece of ceiling that fell in was December of 2018, which, when you think of 4 3/4 years ago, that's a very long time in which to still have not actually got to a point of having a repair carried out. We haven't even actually got to the point of deciding what work is needed. So it's pretty poor. So I do support the motion on the basis of trying to put pressure on Wiltshire Council to do what is needed. It's definitely been sat on its hands. From just a mayoral point of view, from last year, I had a very high number of interactions with residents concerned about the reopening of the City Hall. And that led me to email Councillor Kluwer on a number of occasions and also do freedom of information requests, also tying in with the City Hall. And I'm not, Councillor Kluwer gave me a response, but I wasn't overly sort of warming to the eagerness of speed at which things were moving. And I appreciate that there's a lot that ties the council up and keeps them very busy. And obviously it's all about officer time. And if you haven't got officers actually managing the City Hall directly, as in paid staff dealing with it, I can understand how it slips down the pecking order. And this has been the case with other buildings that Wiltshire Council has failed with the upkeep on. So there is a pattern where perhaps Wiltshire Council's failings are linked with not having staff in situ. But the main concern that I think we would all share is the fact that we know that the City Hall and the library were earmarked as possible places for part of what was loosely termed as phase 2 of a Maltings redevelopment in the central car park area. And of course that still exists. And I'm sure all councillors will also be aware that Richard Kluwer and Richard Walters had what they, I think, referred to as high-level talks with a prospective developer for the Maltings and Central Car Park. But that was all secret. You know, that's all confidential at that level, and we've never been privy to that. And I think residents' fears, I mean, that what I've just said was in the public domain, but I think residents' fears, those that would like to access the City Hall and put it back into use, are matched by many councillor fears, which is, of course, that perhaps the long-term gain is not to actually reopen the City Hall, but is to actually demolish it. And Councillor Kluwer obviously gave us all a statement, and he does allude to that still in the background as a possibility with his comment about the City Hall and library. So there is concern for all of us in terms of the future of the City Hall, or the future of what may or may not be, and the fact that things have been kept secret or from us, and we've not been allowed to be informed of conversations going on in the background. So coming back to the point of why I'm seconding this, it's about putting pressure on Wiltshire Council. I don't expect the City Hall suddenly to magically open, that's right, but I do want the pressure on Wiltshire Council, because that is the pressure that I felt as the mayor. Repeated conversations, as you know, Chair, you do get a huge number of conversations with a great many people, and there is an awful lot of passion and love to see the City Hall reopened. So I just want to echo that as strongly as I can from my experiences over the last year.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Before I go to Councillor Ed, now the motion said to reopen Salisbury City Hall now, and we are in the same tune of we to put pressure on Wiltshire Council. So there is a distinct difference of what we are asking for. So that we have to be a bit clear what we're asking for.
That's exactly what I was about to say, that we're voting on a motion that we're requesting Wiltshire Council reopen Salisbury City Hall now. We're not voting on a motion for asking them to open it as soon as possible. We're asking to vote them to open it now, and it's very clear from the report that that's not safe or possible. If that motion said we request Wiltshire Council reopen Salisbury City Hall as soon as is safe and possible, then that might be something I could consider. But now is clearly not, and it's clearly worded like that to imply that it's a decision by Wiltshire Council not to open it right now, and they could, when they clearly can't open it right now because it's not safe. So I therefore can't support it on that.
Thank you, Councillor Ed. Yes, Caroline. Sorry, Rogers, Councillor Rogers first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just think we ought to be a little bit careful of the emotion in the words that we use. There is nothing wrong with the City Hall roof. It may leak from time to time. The danger is the acoustic suspended ceiling underneath the roof. They're not one and the same, they are separate. So that's the issue. So let's, not be careful what we say in public about the roof collapsing. The roof is fine. It leaks from time to time, like many of our roofs do. It's the acoustic plaster suspended ceiling. And I think, everybody's emotive about getting our City Hall back again. And in some ways, when you have a piece of advice from a senior officer that says caution, but what we haven't seen is the actual structural engineer's report, you know, which is, you wonder why, if this incident happened in 2018, why haven't we got this up-to-date, you know, structural engineer's report, either saying it can be fixed, it can't be fixed. That's the worrying bit. None of us have seen that, none of us. We've seen the advice from a senior council officer saying, you've been advised not to have loud music in there. And, you know, we'd be foolish to ignore that, but we haven't seen the actual report on the real issue, which is the acoustic suspended ceiling. That's what we're all waiting to see. And I think, you know, the more pressure that anyone can put on Wiltshire Council to come forward with that report and share it with the public and be honest with the public, the sooner that happens, the better. And if this motion helps push that along, then I will support it.
Yeah, I second that. Councillor Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few of us that are actually Wiltshire councillors too. And I know previously Ricky has spoke at area board, Paul has, and we're all very passionate about it. But what is really upsetting for me, if something fell off the ceiling in 2018, right, there's insurance to cover it. So why the hell have they not got the insurance to pay for the repair? There is no reason why that City Hall can't be used. There's 101 community groups, dance things that don't need to make a lot of acoustic noise that could be in there. We could be having our area board meetings in there, for goodness sake. It's important that it's reopened and there is a purpose that can be used now. So actually the word now is imperative.
Anybody else? Yes.
I think it's quite interesting that we receive reports from officers and we take their views, and sometimes we take their views and we don't have all the detail behind the views, but we take their views, whereas in this case what we're saying is that do we not believe what this officer is saying? I think we will want the same thing as Richard Clue has said. We want a thriving City Hall, and I was out in my ward a week ago on Saturday and people were talking about the City Hall, and they do want, you're quite right, they do want it to be reopened. But one person said to me, but is it safe? And I think that's the problem for me and for other people as well. And until we know whether it's safe, I cannot support this. What I'd like to do instead is to look forward and try to work with Wiltshire Council and our Wiltshire councillors to find a solution, to find the money in order to repair it. And I think that would be a lot more positive. It's very easy to say it's her fault, it's his fault, it's their fault. That doesn't really get us anywhere. That just takes us round and round in circles, I believe. And I think the more positive way ahead would be to try to work with Wiltshire Council to get the thing open.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Yeah, I'd like to think about this word urgency that we're talking about, because if there is a matter of urgency, the urgency is to establish the condition of the ceiling and a timescale for repairing it. That's the urgent issue that we should be discussing. But I'm also concerned about a broader issue, and we're talking about a generation of young people that have had their musical talent nurtured in live performances in that City Hall. We've lost 2 years through COVID and we're drifting on, and there may be a whole generation of children that have not had the chance to perform in front of a huge audience and develop their confidence and their skills as a musician. Same applies to Salisbury Dance Studio and a whole range of other community groups. Apart from that, we're trying to recover from various economic shocks, and that City Hall, even if they don't make huge amounts from the event, it brings people into the city, and we do need things that bring people into the city right now as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit about the question of trust and how much trust we put in Wiltshire Council. I think many people in Salisbury regard the City Hall as almost the barometer of how they how much money and how much desire Wiltshire Council has got in investing in the arts in Salisbury. We've seen a decline in the last few years in terms of funding. We've seen it to the degree at the Arts Centre with no more outreach work being done, no more pottery classes. And people have seen this decline taking place over the last 5-10 years, and people are worried that this is continuing. And I hear what everybody says about the safety of the City Hall, but the thing I struggle with is that it was, the thing fell down in 2018, and as far as I'm aware, at this present in time, no one's actually done a structural engineer's report on that. And if we don't pass this motion and don't build that pressure up even more, then I suspect in 6 months' time, in a year's time, we'll still be having an empty City Hall. And I think we'll be failing in our responsibility towards the residents of Salisbury and the people who visit Salisbury. Those arts, as just been mentioned, bring in an awful lot of money into Salisbury. It's one of the defining features of Salisbury after perhaps the cathedral and the marketplace. And we need to nurture them and make them develop better. And we've all seen, as I said, a decline in the last few years. And this seems to be yet another part of that decline. They should have done that structural engineer's report. They should have done it years ago. And then if that structural engineer's report says it's dangerous, fair enough. But why haven't they done it? Yeah, I just can't understand it. There's no 20-year maintenance program there, is there? There is something seriously wrong, and we need to put the pressure on them. Otherwise, we're going to lose. That City Hall won't be open. That City Hall will go unless we put pressure on them to get it open.
There's a lot being said that I agree with, that I think we all agree on. It's an issue I think we probably all agree that City Hall should be reopened as a venue, but that's not what we're voting on, and this is an irresponsible thing to vote on it being should reopen now. And I just want to ask why it's the word now in there as opposed to soon, because as far as I can see, the only reason for the word now is to suggest that if it's voted against, that's because people don't want it to be open, which is not the case. I'm going to vote against it, this motion being we reopen it now, but I'm not against it being reopened. And that's
Thank you, Chair. I would just emphasise the economic impact. It's not just failing to bring people into Salisbury, it's taking money out of Salisbury. I'd rather be spending money going to a gig in City Hall than going to the Anvil in Basingstoke, or going to the Bick in Bournemouth, or going to the Lighthouse in Poole, or going to the Cheese and Graham in Frome, and having a meal there maybe as well. I think we all agree on that, and I think the wording is really irrelevant. I think we all want the same thing. We want the City Hall open as soon as possible to help regenerate the economic vitality of our city. Thank you.
I just wonder that the problem with the City Hall, as we all know, is the ceiling in the auditorium. Perhaps there could be room for manoeuvre in this and asking Wiltshire Council if they would consider opening other parts of the City Hall, perhaps not the auditorium, but maybe we all know there's a meeting room upstairs, Alamein Suite. Richard Clewer talks in his paper somewhere, I can't see it at the moment, about the entrance to the City Hall. Perhaps we could ask Wiltshire Council if, and I think that could be a step, that could be a way of them showing that their intentions is to open once the building is safe. It could be that the insurance company won't insure, I don't know, but I just wonder if that could be a suggestion that we could make to them.
Thank you, Chair. I'm listening with a lot of interest, and I think I agree with everybody. I think I'm not going to say it again. We all agree that City Hall needs to open. I think Councillor King raises an interesting point here, which is that when we say reopen City Hall, we can be quite vague on the terms of that, which is, I think Councillor Sample has been quite clear on it. We're not talking about the whole thing right this second. We are talking about, can we get community groups back into it? In the same way, when we're saying now, again, Councillor Sample has been quite clear when he means now as in as safely as possible. I think we can all again agree that when the ceiling falls down many years ago and a plan hasn't been put in place to sort that out, and Councillor Cluer's documents say there's something's going to come from officers in the next 3 months. That's where the need for urgency is this City Council has the opportunity to put pressure on Wiltshire Council to do what residents of Salisbury want, which is to open City Hall.
Just really, as former chair, I would probably just suggest that Councillor Rimmer, if you're really, really keen to try and be supportive of the motion, that you'd propose an amendment, for example, change the word now to utmost urgency.
Yeah, we were going to do that anyway, Councillor. Can we hear Joe first? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is my concern is the wording. You know, now implies to the public that we're going to open the doors tomorrow, and that clearly is not viable unless councillors around this table are willing to personally vouch for the safety of the public that are going to walk through those doors. I'd also like to raise the issue of whether we could or Wiltshire Council would actually be able to be covered by insurance if we were to do that. If we've been advised that the building is potentially not safe, how can we insure that building for public use? I would suggest that we can't. So I think it's foolhardy to say that we can just open the doors, let the public in, when we've been advised that the building is not safe, and we have to take that advice and wait for proper instruction. Everybody would like to see it open, but to sit and say we want it open now is misleading. So I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Just before I go to Councillor Sven Hocking, I think having spoken to everyone, everybody said, we all know how important the City Hall is. However, I'm sure Councillor Sample's motion can be amended, or look, everybody would like to see the City Hall to be open, but the pressure to open now, I cannot support that. I mean, although I will refrain from voting as a chairman, however, now what I understand, I could be wrong, what I mean by now is you open tomorrow, regardless whatever the cause is, regardless whatever the problem is, I want it open. I cannot vote on that one because it will not be insured. It is very difficult to say. If we were to say we want Wiltshire Council to see the structure report and ASAP, we want that to be open, maybe I can support on that one, which sounds logical because I certainly couldn't vote on open now as it is. No, it's not possible. Councillor Sven Hocking, yes. No, I think everybody needs to speak for the first time. So Councillor Hocking first, and then I'll go back for the second time.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the first thing I'd say is be careful what you wish for. It might come true. All right. There might be an opportunity to build something much better than we have at the moment. Might be. Richard Cluer is pushing his officers at Wiltshire Council extremely hard to come up with some options as to what to do with the City Hall. I get the feeling from the my left-hand side of the table here is that A, you don't believe him. B, you don't believe Wiltshire Council officers. C, you don't believe the reports that are written. And I find that a bit disappointing. Yeah, we don't come here and say to our officers at City Council, I'm sorry, I don't believe what you've written. I didn't say tonight, I don't believe those numbers in the report that came about for Rowbarrow tonight. Did I? Just because I could. So I think that's a little bit disingenuous and not particularly happy about that. But go back to be careful what you wish for. If you put enough pressure on councillors and their officers, they are only people, and they might go, do you know what? Every time we think of doing something in Salisbury, everybody has a go at us. So what we'll do is, rather than have a look at whether we can do something different with the City Hall, and that might be knocking it down and building something new that's fit for purpose for the next 60 years, which is about how old this place is, they might just turn around and say, stuff it. We'll patch it up and we'll leave it, and then future administrations can sort it out in years to come, a bit like what we've just done with the ground maintenance robot. Yeah, we might find with the City Hall we're in a position whereby they've run out of money all of a sudden and can't afford to fix it because they've spent it on somewhere else, and in 20 years' time, Robow will run out of money and there won't be enough to fix it. So, you know, we've just done almost what we're accusing Wiltshire Council of doing. So just be careful what you wish for. Developers, Tom, you mentioned it. If I'm in negotiations in a competitive tender when I was in business, who do you think the last person that I would want to know about my negotiations with that client would be? I'll tell you, a bunch of councillors. Because in a heartbeat, my competition would know exactly what was going on. And I don't want them to know that. Yeah, these discussions are confidential for a reason, and that's not because it's a secret and we don't want to tell those pesky councillors what's going on. It's a competitive business, and we're talking millions and millions and tens of millions of pounds. You do not want your competition to know what you are bidding and what you are negotiating. And anybody who's been in business, Paul, you have been, Ricky, you have been, you would not disclose to your competition what you were doing, would you? So, again, we've talked about the ceiling, the suspended ceiling, and it's acoustics, not the roof. Yeah, but we had it open for the NHS because we're not inviting people to come and have their jabs to the accompaniment of Motorhead or some heavy metal band all day, are we, where the roof might come in? It's all nice and quiet and peaceful, so there's no stress to the building, so there's no risk to the public. That's why we did it. And Paul, I think you said it's been empty for a couple of years. The NHS only cleared out in March, so it's not that long ago. So we're in a position whereby Richard has gone, do you know what, if it's going to cost a couple of mil to fix the roof and it's cost a mil to fix the library, that's 3. If we can scrape up enough money together forever, we might be able to put a new building in place that will allow us to give us a new library, a new city hall, a new performance venue, and all that sort of stuff. So that opportunity is on the table, and that is what Richard is trying his hardest, and he's pushing his office as hard as he can to make them come up with an options list, which we can then work on. Nobody's hiding anything. Nobody's doing anything secretly. Nobody's trying to mislead the public or us. It's just one of these things that takes time. And Richard is fed up with all the toing and froing with Maltings and this, that and the other. He's making a strategic decision. We're going to make a call on this and do it. If we beat him up so much and his officers up so much to do something, he's going to flip us the bird and say, thanks very much, we'll fix it. And do you know what? You're going to have your city hall for the next 60 years. But then at some point, do you know what? You're going to have to do something about it. If you really felt that passionate and we want the City Hall returned to this city where we can look after, and it's our job and it's with us and with our residents, then request an asset transfer to the City Council. Then it's yours. Then you can look after it. Then it's your responsibility. Then you can open it now because it's your call.
Thank you.
Hang on. Who said I finished?
Can you wind up, please?
No. Okay. I haven't seen the structural report either. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it's probably this thick. Yeah? But if Wiltshire Council are telling me they've got a report that says it's unsafe, I'm not going to disbelieve them. So I get the sentiment that we want this open now. But if you push it and we go, OK, let's open it now, then it is what it's going to be. Yeah, there won't be opportunity. You'll spend 2 years or 3 years building up the business, getting the bands and all the rest of it. And then at some point, someone will say, do you know, we've got to do some major work here. And then you have to close it all again. And all that effort in those 2 or 3 years before that will be wasted. And you will have to start all over again. And we're talking about getting a third party in to run it for us. No one's going to do that in the knowledge that in a couple of years' time, we might have to take it apart and put it back together and rebuild it. All right. So I'm not going to support the motion. Because, as you said, Paul, it doesn't mean now, it means something else. If it means something else, perhaps that's what you should have put in your motion. But just be careful what you wish for, because it might come true. Thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of things that I'm still concerned about over this debate. First of all, the lack of respect for officers is not to do with not believing the officers, it's the absence of a structural survey. It's not a matter of not trusting the officer's opinion. It's an opinion, it's not a structural survey. Secondly, we're talking about insurance. Well, the issue of insurance will not be resolved until we have a structural survey, and that will determine whether it's safe or not. So the urgent issue is we need to have a proper survey done. And we've started talking about a long-term project which may or may not come off next year, year after, whatever. But before we do that, we need to establish whether we can actually use the City Hall. The starting point about finding an alternative surely must be to assess the value of the asset that we currently have and whether that's workable.
So before I go to a few councillors, do we have something additional to say, or we just like Councillor Sample to sum up? Yes, please, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to speak to something that Councillor Broom said, and possibly also that you said, Sven. The information as we understand it, the information in the report that we've been given suggests that we had a report, there was a report done 2019, and then upon that basis the decision has been made to not introduce any acoustic stress. Fair enough, fine. Councillor Broom, you asked whether reopening now for anything other than music might invalidate the insurance. The point is, I suppose, that we've already done that, or we haven't done that. The Wiltshire Council has already done that. They had a report done in 2019 that said no acoustic stress. Fair enough. After that, have allowed the NHS in. So I don't necessarily think that's, I'm not going to say it's not an issue, but I don't think that's the issue at play here. The City Hall has been used. It has been in use since that report. We have not, I'm not aware of anything that has been done, subsequent to that, and it has been used. And I don't think there's any reason, therefore, without further information, without additional information that says we couldn't do the same again. We're not necessarily saying, the suggestion is not necessarily being made to, as you say, bring in Motorhead. But as other councillors in this meeting have said, there are spaces which can be used. There is opportunity for the space to be put into use of some description at this point, were their desire and will to have that done. I haven't read the full structural report. What I have read is a completely different structural report into a completely different roof collapse. And in that structural report, a roof with a very similar to the City Hall. There is also the information in there is that any use by people can have an effect to any ceiling. Right? You get people into a space that adds heat, adds humidity. These are things that can have an effect to an already damaged or possibly compromised ceiling. What that says to me is that the structural report that was done in January 2019 does not say that nobody can use that building, that we shall not use that building, that no one must go in there because the roof is at risk of imminent collapse. That's what it says to me. I think that's pretty clear from the fact that they've allowed the NHS to use it. I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Corbett, do you have it? No, okay. Yes.
Chair, I think it's been a really good debate, actually. I've really enjoyed it. And several people have spoken more than once. And everyone, I think, has expressed their love and admiration for Salisbury City Hall and all that it represents for us as a city and for us individually as users of it. And I think actually that's why people feel so strongly about this. Over the course of the last 10 days, particularly since I kind of got onto this campaign, I've been really astonished by the large number of people who've signed up and have said, yeah, this is my experience of the City Hall. When I was 6, I went there and it was the first time I'd been on stage, and I've still got the photographs, and I had such a great time. You know, there are people who were at the Bowie gig, you know, right back in 1965, I think it is, some 12 gigs before he declared that he was going to leave the Spiders, you know. So it's a massively important place. Rolling Stones were there. And I think that's why Jane Scott, when she was the leader of Wiltshire Council. She knew that because she used it so often. She was in and out of there on a regular basis. The staff have told me we saw a lot of Jane Scott as an individual punter, not just as leader of the council. And I think that's why she decided that she really wanted it as part of the asset transfer over to Wiltshire Council. And I kind of understand that. I think we're in a bit of a fix here, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I think we all want it open as soon as possible. There are some people who want it open sooner, and those are the people who could use the training facilities in the El Alamein suite. They're the people who want to go and visit the War Memorial on the 11th of November. You know, they're the sort of people who quietly would do their meetings in the main auditorium, but not necessarily go there to hear a big, you know, a big loud band playing at full blast. There are all sorts of things we could do with the City Hall as a community that would bring income and life to it. And I think that's something that I think Richard could very well deliver if he is of a mind to do it. Because I think the problem with the sort of grandiose, no, that's unfair. It's not a grandiose plan. But I mean, things like the hotel on the car stack, you know, I mean, that was a great idea, wasn't it? It was a great idea. And you had your photograph taken there, Mayor, you know, with Richard. And, you know, we wanted to turn it into a hotel. Of course, it wasn't deliverable. You know, it didn't get delivered for whatever reason. There are other projects, you know, the artistic quarter, which I totally get. I really want to see that happen in Salisbury. I'm really excited by that. But it has come up against the buffers a bit, and, you know, it's kind of fading into the background. I think there's a group of people out there in our community, not here, some of them perhaps, but there is a lot of people out there in our community who have the skills, the professionalism, the expertise to lead the way forward on this. And what I would ask Richard and Wiltshire Council to do is to liaise with them, to have a conversation with them, to take on board the views that have been expressed by everyone around the table today, all of whom have been supportive of the idea of opening the City Hall again. The only question is when, yeah? I think we could have better communications between the Salisbury Area Board, which has made its views known on a number of occasions. I think the members of the board and the members of this council would want to be reassured by going in and seeing the building for ourselves, just to check actually, you know, where we think it is. I think we would want the council, through Richard, who is our leader, to negotiate with other developers and by all means come forward with a plan. But in the meantime, we want our City Hall back. And I think the time has come for Wiltshire Council to deliver that, to have that conversation with us, a conversation, you know, one where they come up with some ideas and we come up with some ideas, where some people from their side volunteer and some people from our community volunteer, so that we go forward together on this and it doesn't become divisive, as it will surely come if we continue down the route that Wiltshire Council seems determined at the moment to follow. So the offer's out there. Let's talk about it. Let's get round the table. Let's have more communication, more consultation, and I think it will deliver a City Hall. Now, going back to the point, I didn't say, when I say now, I don't mean instantly. I mean, when is now? That's not now. Can't be this afternoon, can't be this evening.
Well, you did say 10 objects.
But it could be, I said, yeah.
Of now.
The reality is, we've got those words. We want promptly. We want it shortly. We want it punctually.
We want
that. Snappily. All of these are definitions of the word now. Now is not an instant, it's a moment in time, and it's as long as you want it to be. I think we could turn the keys tomorrow and get back to using it for training social services staff who are currently having to travel all the way to County Hall for their meetings.
That's a different what you're saying. I'm sure there is a press here. I'm sure they were able to acknowledge what is now and all the definition you have given. However, Councillor Sample, I'm just going to draw your attention to one thing. At times comes, at time, yes, as a chair. As a times.
Can I move my motion?
Yes.
I've moved my motion formally.
Do we have a seconder?
We go to the vote.
I did second and spoke on that. Can I ask for a recorded vote?
Yep. Okay.
Councillor Sample just had a quick message from Richard Hurd and said if you would like the City Hall on asset transfer, he'll do the deal with you tomorrow. So it can return to the city in a heartbeat if you say we want the money. We want the money for the repairs done. I'm very happy to arrange that.
That can be a separate dialogue. Can we have that after the meeting, please? Okay, so we have a motion and has been seconded. Can I see hands of vote? Those in favour?
Please keep your hands up clearly.
Nine, yep. And all those against? Six.
Hands up, please.
I'm being neutral as a chairman.
Chair, can I just respond to what Sven just said about Richard
No, can we take that out of the meeting, please? That's not.
I'd be very happy to meet him. I've got some people for him to meet.
That's fine.
And tomorrow would be fine.
That is fine. You're both Wiltshire councillors. You can do whatever you like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Trowbridge is open.
There's a group of people who want to discuss it.
So we have
with him.
So there is 9 voted for, 6 voted against,
Any
and
abstention?
1 abstained.
Yes.
Can I just record Councillor Stanway's vote? I didn't. Can you just confirm what you voted for? You voted for or against, please? For. The corrected count is 10 for, 6 against, 1 abstained.
Unless we have anything urgent for me to consider, if not, then I declare the meeting closed.